AITA. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my date's meal? Okay, so this story took place a few years ago, but it's something that still crosses my mind occasionally. When I went on a date with my friend, it didn't exactly go as planned. We had been speaking for about a week or so prior about going out to dinner somewhere. It was his idea and he was fairly persistent. He was insanely interested in me, and while I wasn't as interested in him, I figured I'd give it a shot. He had originally wanted to take me to a steakhouse, which I was later glad we didn't. We ultimately settled on a local Mexican restaurant. Dinner was going well and the conversation was flowing smoothly. We ordered our meals, nothing too expensive, and some cheese dip. The bill would have probably been around $30 or so. After we're finished eating, my friend comes out of complete left field with, "So, I don't actually have any money, can you pay for the meal?" To say I was shocked, was an understatement. This guy had been begging me to come to dinner with him for an entire week, almost picking out an incredibly expensive restaurant, the steakhouse, knowing he had absolutely no way to pay for anything, not even his own meal. I'll admit that I had enough money to cover both of the meals, however I told him I only had enough to cover my own. Had he have been upfront about me paying for the full meal before we ever went out, I would have been more than happy to. However, I was blindsided. I took the bill and explained to the restaurant manager that I was only paying for my portion and the cheese dip. He then began arguing with my friend about how he needed to pay for his meal. The manager obviously wasn't just going to allow my friend to leave, so I told him I needed to go. He couldn't believe I wouldn't help him out, and I ultimately unfriended him for putting me in such an awkward and embarrassing situation. Should I have just paid for his and called it a day? I've never been the type of person to just expect people to hand over money or pay for my things, so I don't expect it from others either. AITA. Not the a-hole. Interesting situation. I pondered if I should say everybody sucks here, because although he was an arsehole, you did have the money, and you could just unfriend him later for this inexplicably dickish move, but honestly, what the hell? To quote your own words, he has been begging you to dine with him for a long time, he almost picked an expensive restaurant, and he goes to dinner with no money. Then he doesn't tell you the situation beforehand and asks you to pay for his meal in the middle of dinner? The nerve. I think you taught him a good lesson. Honestly, you never invite someone to an event without the money to pay for yourself. Going Dutch is great, and someone treating someone else is also great. But begging to out with OP and then sticking her with the bill? Did he just want a free dinner? My BFF in high school was friends with my boyfriend at the time, and she invited him to go see a movie with her. They get there and she told him she didn't have any money and could he please pay for her ticket and snacks? Then she posted about it online like, "Going to see a movie with my favorite guy. That's for the treat," and I was pissed. Don't use people for free anything. I may get downvoted for this, but to me NTA. Not the a-hole. You always bring enough money to cover yourself, unless you specifically know your meal will be covered. The fact that he was tacky enough to pull this instead of telling you outright, or ordering something he knew he could cover, makes him the a-hole. NTA. Not the a-hole. The person who asks to hang out should expect to at least pay for themselves, if not both people. If he wasn't able to pay, he could have just said, "Hey, I want to hang out, but I don't have a lot of money right now," and planned a free date, or at the least he could have asked if you can cover it first. Sure, you lied about not being able to pay his meal and left him at the restaurant, but he put you in an extremely uncomfortable position, and it was really rude of him to just assume you're going to be paying for everything. NTA. He probably had plenty of money to pay. It's more likely that over the course of dinner he realized that you wouldn't be having sex with him, and he attempted to not waste the money. I've seen this mindset before. NTA. Why do you think you would be? If he's got no money, that's something that needs to be brought up well in advance. Not like he forgot his wallet accidentally. I guess because it weighs on my mind off and on over the last 7 years now. It probably crosses my mind often because the restaurant is only about a mile from my home and I see it often, which reminds me of the situation constantly. Info. Did he say why he didn't have money at the time? And did he offer to pay you back later? I can't remember his reasoning for not having the funds, though I do know he was employed at the time. And no, there was no offer to ever pay me back, only a promise that he'd pay for the next time we went out, which was never going to happen. And he was using you unless he forgot to bring money, and offered to pay you back and clearly he didn't, so it's his fault. And what kind of person pushes hard to get a date when they can't even afford to cover their own part? Much less pushes for someplace expensive? And I do not understand the sheer audacity of this motherfucker. If I tried anything near to this, I am quite sure I would have spontaneously combusted from the shame and horror of what I just tried to pull. And this reminds me of a story from my own life. So I have this friend who I often trade trading cards, Legos, and toys with. Now, after Christmas or something, I had this one Lego set that he wanted incredibly, but I didn't want to trade it with him. He spent about the next week bugging me about it until I finally gave in and traded it to him for a bunch of stuff. About 1 day later, he had the gall to ask to undo the trade, as he thought we would be playing with Legos more, as if the week wasn't enough warning. He also claimed that in every trade he makes he is allowed to take it back. Sorry everyone if that story was poorly narrated or too wordy, I don't have much writing practice and any tips would be appreciated. Thanks. I once went on a date after a bar shift. I was tired, but it was nice to get out and do something fun. My date went to get us drinks. I asked for a soft drink and gave him a $5 note which he took. He bought the drink but didn't give me back change. I know it was such a small thing, and I'm not normally one to care about a couple dollars, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. And he probably does this a lot, so I'm glad he got denied. And if he didn't have any money, he should have called you and cancelled the date instead of telling you nothing. Also, it's a pretty a-hole move to say something after the bill has arrived. Do you have any mutual friends, so you could find out what happened in the end if he ended up pulling out a card to pay for his meal? Simple rule. If you invite someone for dinner, be ready to pay for said dinner. If you're invited, be prepared to pay for your half. Personally, I would have paid for the meal and then shut down communications. Just make it easy. And the only time I've allowed someone to buy me food because I didn't have any money, was when we decided to go to a restaurant spontaneously while hanging out, and I was very clear from the very beginning that I had no money. He was being intentionally deceitful, and was hoping you'd be too polite to hold him accountable for his actions. You absolutely did the right thing, and go you for unfriending him. And I've been in a situation where the guy's card declined and I had to cover the meal. But the guy at least attempted to pay. This guy is either looking for free meals or it was some weird test. Good riddance. Didn't some dude get convicted for scamming women out of $1,000 in date meals? And I made the mistake of trying one more time with an ex by going away with him for the weekend. He didn't have a credit card, so I reserved and paid for the hotel and breakfast for 2 nights, thinking he'd cover dinner the 2 nights and we'd be quits. Went for dinner and at the end he expected me to pay for it. He was the INE who had badgered me to go away with him and give it another go. Walked out, left high to pay for meal, packed bags, and was doing so when he came back to room. He told me he'd take me back if I paid for everything and succumbed to his list of demands. I left, Cancelled breakfast and the second night. Took 3 more moths in saying no and a cease and desist letter to get it through his head that I wasn't a meal ticket. OMG. You're the best. I always tell my little sister not to take any shoot from jerks and she never listens. This story makes me feel good like somebody out there is getting my advice, LOL.